Everyone, thank you for hosting this, Peter, and hope everyone is feeling good enough for now. So let's begin with paying our respects to the Triple Gem. Supatipanno yassa bhagavato savaka sangho Dhamayang bhagavantang satthamma sasangham Ime sangare yataraham aropite yape puchaya Satu no bhante bhagava suchira parini buddhopi Bhashima Janathanugam Brahmanasa Hime Sakare Tu Katapana Karabhute Patigan Hatu Amhagam Dikaratam Nitaya Sukhaya Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Undang Bhagavan Tang Apivate Bhagavato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhamma Namassam Patipanno bhagavato savaka sangho sangham namami Nandamayam buddhassa bhagavato abhupapakanamakkarang romam se Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa in the meditation And just to highlight a couple of very crucial factors, sati and Dhamma Vijaya. Sati, mindfulness, Dhamma Vijaya, exploration or inquiry into Dhammas. And the mindfulness establishes the foundation for Dhamma Vijaya. So as in the Satipatthana method, we establish mindfulness immersed in, and with regard to this experience of body. What tells you have a body? What is the kind of awareness that sense this is a body, this experience? Experience of warmth, textures, subtle movements, pressures. And spreading one's sati, one's loop of attention over the entire field, because this is not just one thing, is it? It's a number of flowing experiences, warmth, certain kinds of pressure, movement, openness. Sometimes it feels hard or fluid. All this is a field of experiences. Just to generate or find some stability, you expand your attention to include the space around and above your body, above that experience, a sense of this has a boundary to it. And beneath that, you have a ground. It's sitting on something. There's that sense of a ground. We keep the process of inquiry beginning it right there. What is this? And using sati, the ability to linger, so the tension just doesn't run away, jump off, or even jump into a conclusion. So when we say know, we know, direct knowing, pajanati, directly stays in touch. It's different from conceiving, which just touches something briefly and comes up with a statement. You don't want the statement. You don't need the statement. You want the experience. Very simple ground. And be lingering with that. It's a feeling kind of knowing. Using this to slow and steady the rate of mental cognition, the speed of it. Now, anything that is of this nature, it's a field of experience, means you don't want to get too fixated on one aspect. You want to cover all of it. So certainly establishing that sense of ground, and then above that, around that, how do you know something's above something? There's something else there, which is a mental or psychological, if you like, cognitive interpretation and orientation. This is above that. This is the top, this is the bottom. There's an upright axis, which you might call an energy or a sense. Let's not jump to any conclusions. But you'll notice as you continue that exploration, different textures, energies. You come to a boundary or a place where that's the end of it, the space. The tingling at the edge, and then we sense beyond that, no pressure, no sensation, just open. Open, grounded but open. This very sense of grounded open may have certain emotional or psychological effects. You might feel change of speed in our mind, disorientation, or heightened sensitivity. You might experience a silence with something shifting within that. Let's not expect anything, but just grounded, open, lingering. You might find that the steady rhythmic flow of breathing has a comforting quality to it. It's always there for you. It's always there for you. It's alive. It's there for you. That may have certain effects. felt effects. And if you wish, just you might inquire quietly, how am I? Anything preventing me from feeling open and grounded? Anything stirring? Anything nagging? Feeling heavy, turbulent? Whatever may have a thought to it, you may have a series of thoughts. Keep open ground. And that Dhamma inquiry, and to stay open and present with something that seems to be disturbing or in discord or disconnected. Just stay open and grounded, present with that, not intruding, curious. How does this feel? How does this play out in this field? What is this creature running around in this field? Nothing so much is going on. Stay breathing. Stay with that. But maybe quite a bit is going on for you at this time. Then we must be very careful in our inquiry to not introduce something that isn't there. And one thing that isn't there by itself is me, mine, I am. Where's that? That's something added. That's a beginning of a reaction. That's a catching hold of phenomena. And that catching hold, very powerful effects of struggling and wanting and rejecting and feeling caught. And we acknowledge any of that. This is my mind, my life. This is what she does to me. And just go back to the direct experience, something tangled, turbulent, and needs to be held carefully, presence, open and grounded, receiving the gift, life breathing through. And if anything, just that acknowledgement of sympathy. Sympathetic listening. What does this want to say or do? This feeling, this felt experience. Can we help it find its own resolution, its own movement in this field? So I'll conclude that small meditative presentation. Actually, this is something to have cultivated, to train oneself in as a way of through life, actually, just to keep that practice going as life happens to you. And it's so important to have that sense of grounded presence, open awareness in noticing what's happening, what's being moved, and just putting aside those very natural interpretations. Oh, this is my mind, my mood, my attitudes. I am this way. That's a reasonable interpretation, but it is an interpretation rather than actual revelation. What we're looking at and having faith in is that truth reveals itself. We create the openness for things to reveal themselves to us. What they reveal in general is that phenomena change. There's nobody experiencing them, and they never concluded. We create that open ground as a refuge and as a resource and as an orientation to let our life move through and learn what needs to be learned. Now, I did say today I would respond to some questions, and some of you have presented questions. Some of them are over a period of time. I don't always get round to dealing with them all in one session, so I've kept track of questions and comments. And I think the first thing I'd like to put under the heading of karma, and there's a lot of interest in metta and goodwill and how to deal with stuck emotions and so forth. So maybe I'll look at that person saying how to protect one's axis on center after retreat. Very difficult to be away from Sangha. What should I practice? How should I practice when I'm outside of retreat and outside of a supportive community? So that's to do with environment, isn't it? By environment, I don't just mean trees, I mean your psychological environment, your social environment. And suddenly that has moved from a quiet, still, sympathetic place to a place of, and listening place to a place of considerable amount of impact and not much listening, not much receptivity, and probably all kinds of different influences. And thereby, of course, we're in the field of karma. Action happens. And karma is normally is often understood to be things I do, but actually it's bigger than that. It's not just what I do, it's what everybody does. So even if we did nothing, we'd still be in the field of karma. We're in the field of there is activity happening. There are activations, there's actions happening that trigger certain responses. So our environment really comes down to karma. And if we're in a retreat or with benevolent people, generally the karmic qualities that are coming in are supportive, benevolent, and so forth. As one's being impacted by qualities of spaciousness, allowing, generosity, wisdom, and so forth. And outside of, suddenly you find yourself in a situation where that's no longer occurring. And so naturally one gets disoriented. Therefore, it's so important to, well, first of all, to seek good companions, good companionship, either actually in the flesh or at least in your mind. So we can remember and bring to mind and reflect upon over a long period of time the skills, the actions, the examples, and the other beings, but also how we felt in a situation where we felt comfortable and settled. Because these retreat situations, however temporary they may be, do help us to align ourselves to a fundamental inner axis, an inner center, an inner groundedness, which is not to do with an external environment. It's autonomous from that. Doesn't mean we can't sense anything, but we've got an autonomous center that can reflect upon it. And that's really what retreats are about. They're not just about having an experience within the retreat, but having touching into something through that mediated environment that enables you to access something that's there in your own presence. And that's exactly what it is. It's your own presence. And your own presence is not really doing anything. It's not karma. Your own presence doesn't do anything. It's not created by something. It's not doing anything. Therefore, it remains a kind of a central refuge place where we go, that's what's happening to me. That's what's happening to me, even though the me is invisible, the sense of what it's pointing to is this sense of presence. If you think it's pointing to some historical self, me, then that's where the mistake occurs. We generate this psychological quality called self, and we think things are happening to that. And that psychological quality is actually not your true center, not your true ground. So it's also incapable of dealing with phenomena that arise, because it is itself is a series of phenomena, isn't it? You can't find a stable, grounded self. There are just various emotions and energies and feelings and activities that we call mind. And they themselves are karma. They create things, they do things, they affect our minds, they move our energies around, and they're impacted by the energies and the moods of others. So that psychological self is incapable of finding a true balanced refuge and a way to orient and to contemplate the experience that's occurring. And so it's necessary to find that, to know that access. And very simply speaking, again, this is why the Buddha so strongly recommended sati, mindfulness immersed in the body. To the extent he's saying all qualities, conditions, phenomena that are pertinent to awakening all gather together in mindfulness of the body. Just like the rivers stream into the ocean, mindfulness of the body encompasses all beneficial qualities that are supportive for awakening. You only touch the deathless through mindfulness immersed in the body. And people might really imagine that means you've got to focus on a particular sensation, but that's not what it means. It means mindfulness of your fundamental presence. Okay. So, okay, let's get this down to what am I referring to? Well, another way of putting it, because it's not a sensation, it's not a feeling. It's, you could say, here, you're here, you're here. Now, you may be here in New York or Singapore or anywhere, but no, you're not. That's just the wallpaper. That's just what it looks like around you. That's just the language. That's not where you are, because that can go at any given moment. If it's pitch black and there's no sound coming, are you in Nigeria or Glasgow? How do you know? But you're always here. Yeah? That here-ness is underneath the veils of consciousness, of sense consciousness. Now, for example, again, another example, if we come into balance, standing up, feel complete balance and relax muscles that you don't need. And you can sense an axial presence. And you can, yeah. So that's such an important practice, such an important point to come back to time and time again. It doesn't do anything, but it gives an orientation whereby you're not compulsively grasping, reacting, fighting, worrying, proliferating about yourself. And this might take, once you get aware of that reference point, you could probably get there in a few seconds. Even better, when you begin a day, it's just to begin a day, whatever you need to do to access that. And another reference point I would say is that generally the stillness of that arrives through movement. You move towards stillness. That is, you begin to gently feel the movement of your body, either by physically walking around without aiming to go, and you're just feeling the mobility of the body, and also by breathing. That's a movement, moving through your body, and perhaps both of them. And just putting aside the waves of mental, emotional energy, moods that come and rise, and just keep referring back to that till you get some sense of feeling grounded and stable in yourself. That's the way to begin your day. one aspect of it. Yeah. And trying to returning to that several times a day, probably. When this is going on, but I can stretch my skin, I can roll my shoulders, I can open my eyes, close my eyes, and where am I now? So I wouldn't say stillness itself can be deceptive, because there's a stillness which is the kind of like clamped, closed stillness, which means which is a very understandable reaction. We just shut down and go stiff, or try to stop everything. Silence that's imposed rather than arrived at. So to arrive there means a gentle, animated, I don't mean rushing around, I mean it's a sense of living, the movement of life moving through you, moving, and then who is this happening to? This life force is happening. That's the essence of that presence. And as we turn our attention towards that presence, because it's not located in a particular point in the body, which can be held with focused attention, instead, because it's not focused on a particular point, it's received through opening your attention. It's called awareness. Awareness is the capacity, the receptive aspect of the heart, mind, citta, receiving your own presence. And that's awareness. Awareness connecting to presence gives you a very firm ground, firm place. And by and large, for many people, that movement towards presence, bringing awareness towards presence, is a movement that's endowed with goodwill. It's like a loving devotion to presence. Very often in monasteries, we have chanting, which is a loving devotional gesture, sense of coming into stillness through loving presence, through devotion to presence, through heartful response to being present, rather than an intellectual decision, I am this, I should do that. I would suggest these are very foundational and necessary and well tried and tested practices. Now, another couple of questions. Person says, in daily life, their system gets stuck in strong emotions about a previous experience with a person. Their emotions get strong emotions about a previous experience with a person who treated me badly in my workplace, and so forth. Add some details. The person's left the workplace, but situation is kind of over, but the memories and the turmoil are still there. I couldn't cope with the situation and felt helpless, confused and overwhelmed. Yeah. Again, well, this is what I mean by karma, which I don't necessarily mean things you've deliberately done, but being in the field of action, your own action, and also other people's actions, and how other people's actions or the actions you received trigger certain emotional responses and probably behavioral strategies. Emotional responses may be a sense of shock, confusion, disappointment, disorientation, and the psychological strategies might be shut down, run away, try to make it stop. These are quite common. This is actually creating more karma. Those mental actions that we find ourselves coming up with because of how we're being treated, our mental actions, our emotional actions, are another form of karma. Yeah? So the actions of others may impact us. We get activated and respond in certain familiar ways. That's called karma, action. And that karma creates me. I don't create karma, karma creates me. That sense of familiar responses, reactions, and so forth generate the sense of who I am as a social personality. And that social personality cannot deal with these experiences because it is the result of these experiences. And of course, the person might feel, oh, I can't deal with this. I should try and make something better. I should try to be this, that, and another. But they can't because they are the result of the experience. They have no command over the experience. So what has to be done is to kind of get back to the beginning of the experience before it becomes personal. And that's why this understanding of karma and presence is so important, because presence precedes the personality, precedes the person. Before we had a personality, we were born. Before we knew what to do, we could breathe. Before we could speak, we were affected. We had presence. From day one, we had presence. Before we knew who we were, we had presence. And so it's returning to that, because then from there, it's possible to begin to generate a more useful response to what has happened to you. Now, this is the meditative response to that situation. It doesn't deal with other responses which may also be necessary and helpful. The meditative response is to feel the feeling as a feeling. And the feeling, of course, may be multiple. There could be the feeling of I can't manage, the feeling of I'm hopeless, the feeling of fear that it's going to happen again, the feelings associated with initial hurt. There could be quite a lot of feelings stacked up. But the first thing we do is let's to be really radically authentic. What is not there is actually a person. There is a series of feelings and responses and reactions. That may not seem to be the answer, but it's the beginning of it. Because then the response that can come up is just all this, in all this, in all this tangle. What is an authentic response that keeps presence in mind? And it has to be some form of goodwill. So the first authentic response from the authentic sense of presence is always some kind of goodwill. It could be the goodwill of patience. Just, okay, I can bear with this. It's just, could be the goodwill of, I'm willing to be here with this. It could be the goodwill of compassion. There's a lot of distress here, a lot of unsettled feeling here. What is the quality of opening to sadness with a generous heart? It could be the goodwill of equanimity. Conditions of the calm is like this, conditions are like this. Why add any more to it? Any more blaming or worrying to it? It could be the goodwill associated with appreciation. At least I didn't act in violent, harmful ways. That's good. This could have got very bad. At least I'm looking at this clearly. That's good. Otherwise, if you don't respond to these emotions clearly, they'll sit there and fester and stew and cripple you. Therefore, if you're looking into this, congratulations, appreciation, support. Of course, there's another question that helps, reiterates this. It's about a person who's experiencing challenging situations right now. This isn't in the past, this is right now, where the same sort of rotten stuff is happening. Relational hostility. Okay, well, this is common. I think probably 1 question in 5 that I get is about relational problems. Maybe 1 in 3, maybe 1 in 2. Why is it so difficult? Because of karma. And karma is an action that generates further action. So somebody's action towards you generates all this activation. And then your activation generates more activation to try and stop being so activated. And then you're going to have to do it, so you search for more actions to do to make this unpleasant action go away. This is the story of karma. It's like a dog chasing its tail. But every time it chases its tail, it adds another tail to it. They're chasing 2 tails, then 3 tails, then 5 tails, and then it, right, that's karma. It proliferates. There's a place called the ending of karma. It's not just the time in the future, there's a place within you where karma doesn't reach, and that's the place of presence. So, but this isn't entirely the end of the story, because but then from there we review with a heart of compassion the whole domain of karma, our own, other people's, whatever we call it, however it takes form. Activation is like this, feeling is like this, emotion is like this. There's not one thing there that should not be, because it is. Now, give another line. Basis of this awakening is about morality, or ethical, or conscience and concern, sensitivity, relational sensitivity, right? So let's take sila, morality, not as just as some do's and don'ts list, but as the experience of relational sensitivity to others and to myself, equalizing to others and to myself, this relational sensitivity, because this covers the relational field, which for many people, perhaps for all of us, is somewhere as afflictions in that. So at least we cover that field of people who are dead 20 years ago, people in the workplace, parents, guides, guardians, dogs, whatever, all of that, there's a sense of it. And essentially harmlessness and truthfulness. Now, these are, of course, these are beautiful words, beautiful ideas. They're much more than that. They're actually energies. You probably recognize that violence is an energy. Yeah. Sharp, tangling, abrasive, intrusive. What's harmlessness like? If violence is an energy, what is non-violence? Is that just nothing? Or is it an energy that receives things respectfully? and does not violate, does not antagonize, does not do that. Truthfulness doesn't add what isn't there. Doesn't say how things should be or shouldn't be, just truth. It's this. It's a clean, straight, unwavering honesty. So these are energies, and they are pure. Now, our ability to maintain them may be faulty, but by themselves, they're innately, there's a purity to them. And you bring up that quality. You remember that quality. You bring it to mind. And then it begins to suffuse. And this is the gateway to the what's called the metta, the divine abidings, or the Brahmavihara, which are of a similar nature. We can all avow and be appreciate the qualities of goodwill, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity. We may not feel we have enough of them. We'll shed more of them. How do we get more of them? This is when you just get into the ideas. But actually, they also have an energy to them, a healing energy. And they suffuse. So when we really touch into the experience of what is, say, love, goodwill, however you want to put it, that heart quality, where does that, whenever that arises for you, whenever even if you remember it, when it has arisen for you, when you've received it from another person, when you really get the sense that someone else is very concerned for your welfare, willing to go walk an extra mile to do something for your welfare, how does that feel? Get it. And when you experience something like that towards another, get it. That is not just an idea, it's an energy that can keep you going, strengthen you, take you through the challenges and the difficulties, brush aside the pettiness and the jealousies, get over the prickling and the tangling, and bring into full health. And it's an energy that suffuses. It goes through the entire body energy system. Yeah. So people sometimes, how do I do metta to this person or that person? Just doesn't matter. Just spread it and see who or whatever arises within that quality that seems to need it. That would be my encouragement for practicing metta. And it's just get the thing going and then let it decide. Get the energy going. It has a wisdom to it. Get that energy established, that mode of practice established, and let it spread, because it has a spreading, suffusive nature. And you'll find it may contact places where you feel a sense of, oh, that was beautiful, mudita, joy. Or places where, oh, that was very painful. And just the soothing water of compassion. Or it may touch you into places whereby there's no immediate answer to this. We must maintain equanimity and stay open and non-reactive. These qualities, they come together. Lovely example in the suttas. This is Samyutta Nikaya 42, chapter 8, called the conch. I won't go through the whole thing, but basically the Buddha says, somebody's asking him about saying it's to do with karma. So somebody's giving this view that if you do any wrong, then immediately you're going to go to hell. Anybody who acts sexual misconduct, lying and cheating, then the karma with that is hell. Pretty straight. And the Buddha saying, no, no, that's not the case. But when one recognizes that one has committed acts of sexual misconduct, intoxication, lying, violence, and so forth, we need to acknowledge that and then generate a field of precepts of ethical sensitivity. It says you then begin to generate that so that the mind does not have ill will and you have right view. And right view is one of the wisdom teachings that helps us to understand and liberate ourselves from karma. That is, we have all said careless things that have been hurtful, uncomfortable, foolish. Right. Therefore, right view, establish and act and bring forth now qualities that are healing, clarifying, honest, generous. End of story. Now, those qualities then are not just ideas, they're actual heart energies. And the Buddha says you practice like this, and then when you have cultivated this, devoid of ill will, unconfused, clearly comprehending, ever mindful, dwell pervading the various aspects of your world with a mind of loving kindness, compassion, loving, appreciative joy, and equanimity. Just as a strong conch blower, you know those shells, pop, 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 that people would use, the trumpets. So just as a conch blower can easily send a signal to all the four quarters, so too when the liberation of mind by loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity is cultivated, any limited karma that was done does not remain there, does not persist there. So this is directly using these to clear out these karmic residues where we feel tangled, hurt, wounded, shivering, bristling, resentful, jealous, fearful, miserable, upset, and confused, plus probably a few more. So how do you get out of this mess? You know, you can't just go around, he did this, she did that, they're going to do this, why am I like this? It's just going to go on. It's the wrong signal. That's not a trumpet. That's not a conch. That's not going to get, it doesn't suffuse. It just runs around nagging and blaming and feeling, you've got to get something steadier. Yeah. And so, but where's that going to come from? It comes from presence, awareness, not from self, personality, but from presence, awareness, then asking the question, the inquiry. Do not add what isn't there. Do not add the sense of self. Don't add the personalities that you may consider to be occurring, even though you know that happened 5 years ago. Don't bring them in. Instead, respond to the hurt, the contraction, the agitation that's occurring in the here and now. What's the first response to that? It has to be gentleness, goodwill. May this be well. Bear with this. Everyone gets this experience of karma. Everyone gets karma. There's nothing personal about it. Everyone gets karma. But as a disciple in training, you have the opportunity, the encouragement, and the skills and the tools that not everyone has, which is this understanding, right view, karma, loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, equanimity. This purifies the relational field, and whatever people do, say, that's theirs, isn't it? Whatever people do or say, that's theirs. May they work their way out of that. May they find a way through their reactions and hostilities and whatever. That's not yours. Yours is to maintain that field, purity, goodwill. And you've got to do this. This is not an easy road. It's a very direct but demanding. You can't go into rights and wrongs. You've got to get very pragmatic. Where's your ground? Where's your heart? And begin to encourage that to meet these uncomfortable, tangling experiences in your own presence and trust the process. It's good to talk about and think about, and bear in mind and share, to remind each other where we are and how this veils of consciousness creates separation that causes so much difficulty that we have to journey across. Therefore, friends, as always, stay with the Dhamma, stay in the stream, be well, and continue to practice. Blessings to you all. And I'll conclude the session with a brief salutation to the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha.
Andamayang Dhammakataya Sadhu Karam Dadamaste Sadhu 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 Anumodami.
Patipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho sangham namo. So, again, much appreciation for hosting the meeting, Peter, and I hope it's been helpful for you, and thank you for your presence. Take good care.
Thank you, Long Pa. And on behalf of everyone here from the global community, we'd like to make an invitation to you virtually as you enter the Rains Retreat in a couple of days. May you be kept in good health. May you be kept on the stream. And may you live a long life, Long Pa, until we meet again in the Dhamma stream. Be well.